Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is not Joe Way, it's Britt Yenser, and boy, do we have a good one for you today. We are finishing up our 4-part series with Corbett. So four episodes sponsored by Corbett. We've been having a good time, lots of conversations about digital signage and accessibility and budgeting and all the stuff we care about in higher ed. And we're going to really expand on accessibility in today's episode. I am joined by Travis Kemp of Corbett and Donovan Monday of WVU. Welcome, you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
I'm going to give each of you the floor for a little bit. If you want to kind of expand on the introduction, introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about where you're coming from. We'll start with Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Britt. So Travis Kemp, Vice President of Product Management at Corbett. Been with Corbett for about a year, but been in the signage industry for a number of years across several companies, across different industries and different facets of signage. Really glad to be here. I live in Michigan and enjoy some signage.
And Donovan.
Yeah, I am the project manager for learning spaces, events, and collaboration at West Virginia University. That encompasses everything that falls under the AVIT purview.
Awesome. So I'm really excited to have you both here and have this conversation with you both. Like I said, as we started, we're going to focus in on accessibility during today's episode. And the first thing I wanted to cover with both of you is asking how you think we can flip people's thinking from accessibility is a box I check to accessibility is something that really improves the experience of everyone.
No, I'll be happy to start. I mean, I think you nailed it. I think there's a misconception that, accessibility is just for individuals with disabilities. But you kind of need to get out of that mindset and realize that it unlocks a better experience for everybody, right? I mean, if you think about, using high contrast layouts in situations where there's lots of sun, or reducing or introducing better contrasting color schemes so that you put your students or your staff in a position to better consume or retain your communications, it really benefits everyone. And I think accessibility is kind of the entry point for it, but it overall just boosts engagement top to bottom. So I think individuals, what I've seen is they kind of need to go into their planning with that mindset from the get-go.
And not just with digital signage, but you're looking at this next group of students, and even the students that are freshmen now are, they're so used to having that digital experience. Even during COVID, they were at home learning, and that modality has switched over to, into higher ed. So the digital experience is something that we have to be very mindful of going forward, especially with the new crop of kids that are coming on campus.
Those are very helpful points. And one thing Travis started to do was actually list up some specific examples of things that people can do, which leads to my next question for you both in terms of pro tips. What are pro tips that you each have for inclusive and accessible digital signage?
Donovan, you want to go first?
Sure. The first thing I would say is that there has to be more. There has to be more signage. There has to be more content. There has to be more buy-in from all of the departments. The problem, I think, most of the problems that we're having on campus right now is that we're just not getting the buy-in that we need to sustain, that kind of campaign. So really trying to figure out how we can show the value added for those signs and where they are, and not just signage, as traditional sense where you have a screen in a hallway or in a building, but using the screens in the classrooms and the PCs in the classrooms and even in the dormitories and everything and dining halls to make sure that all of our information is getting where it needs to go.
Yeah. And at Corbett, really across the industry, what I've seen in terms of best practices, there's some guidelines that I think we'd encourage universities and organizations to follow. Things like, don't shy away from complex fonts, cursive fonts, or really artistic fonts. Use sans serif where applicable. Make sure that the font size is where it needs to be, generally 18 or larger. I talked a little bit earlier about contrasting colors, just making sure that the colors work off of one another and they're easily recognizable, not only up close, but from a distance, right? So you can consume it and things like that. And then like for video, add captions, right? Make sure that the video has captions. Another one that we've seen is like for those with, like, say, a neurodiverse kind of impairment, create a template, right? Create a great, your CMS template such that they bake those accessibilities or those predictable layouts in from the get-go. And then last but not least, you have to make sure that the staff creating the content is using an accessible platform, and that everyone's included in the content build process itself. So it is really top to bottom, and those are the 4 or 5 things that I've seen work well in these situations.
And I do want to call out one thing that Travis said was that that I think is important that we need to fix right now, is that automatic captioning isn't always good enough, right? There, especially when you're in a specialized field like the medical field, or you're talking, mathematical jargon or those kinds of things. They do a great job for a live broadcast, or they do a great job for in the classroom at that point. But letting a device do automatic captioning, needs to stop. We need to be able to get captioners, in there and actually, do that work.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and it kind of leads me to a adjacent follow-up question. What's your opinion on having students use their own devices? Like, do you feel like that hinders accessibility at all?
No, I don't. I think when they're comfortable with it, there are some great products out there in the AV market right now that leverage the personal device for accessibility, for assisted listening and captioning, and video streaming and those kinds of things. I think that that's a good thing. But we also need to be able to have some checkout gear and other things like that to make sure that accessibility reaches everybody, and not just those that can afford it.
Right.
Yeah, and I agree with Donovan. I mean, I think speaking solely through the lens of accessibility, I mean, an individual's or a student's phone generally is already customized for any accessibility modifications that need to take place. Of course, there may be other considerations, security and things along those lines, information sharing. But I think, and Donovan nailed this, like, college student persona is different than when I went to college, right? And so there's just different expectations, and that mobile device is kind of a big part of the experience. So I agree.
Yeah. I really like that Donovan highlighted that you should have a backup as well. I feel like that's what's missing from the conversation, because I always think of the students who dropped their phone that morning and now they're having a really bad day.
Or didn't bring their charger with them to class, or didn't, there's tons of variables that you have to be, you have to account for. Yeah. But as far as like digital signage goes and how that moves the conversation forward, I find that, we can put signs, digital signs up that are, ADA compliant. They have the right measurements off the floor. They are, accessible in that way. And they're still not being engaged with because the content on it is not engaging for enough people. They're trying to cram a bunch of information in on one slide, and it just ends up being, kind of a glorified PowerPoint at that point, instead of really engaging content.
Yeah.
At a lot of institutions, digital signage is kind of a joint effort where someone who does AV in some way gets the TV, quote unquote, the display onto the wall. But then someone from some other team creates the content. So how do you encourage that other team to get in on conversations like what we're having today?
I think you need to drag them to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they need to exactly. You need to drag them to the table, whether it's brute force or not. But I think they have to have that context and kind of that. They need to kind of understand who their audience is and what their audience is looking for and what works and what doesn't and what resonates. I'm not even sure every college university has the same answer there. I'm not sure it's a blanket answer. I think it is unique per a number of different factors, but it's got to happen point blank, to Donovan's point. Absolutely.
And I think there's a big difference between a marketing focus and then an information focus. You have a marketing focus that's trying to promote things and be a little flashy and get out in front of somebody. But for campus digital signage, sometimes it's just relaying messages, relaying information, and being able to figure out how you can leverage both in the same space. I think some people walk by the digital signage thinking it's just commercials for programs or just, there's an event going on, so we're throwing up an event page for it. But buried in that, whether it's in an RSS feed or whether it's in another slide that's presented with it, there's real information there that needs to get to those students.
Yeah, I've seen situations. I recall one a couple of years back where it was a university, and there was certainly a content creation portion of the staff that was responsible for the images and videos and whatnot. But they also extended the capability in certain situations, certain screens, to students. The student was able to create the content. And I recall a conversation where those two pieces of content were different. And the staff learned quite a bit about what works and what doesn't from the student base, right? So I thought that was interesting.
As we're talking about like those different stakeholders and the ways that people can get involved and be part of these conversations, what would you tell those people about the consequences of not doing inclusive designs?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would jump to maybe say some sort of legal or reputational risk there. And sure, maybe, absolutely. But I think there's a human element as well. And, although I don't directly work for a university, I can certainly appreciate the fact that you want your students to succeed. And so, things like empowering academic performance and, just missing maybe a critical safety alert, right? Those are all things with serious repercussions. So those are a few things that come to mind, but it does go beyond, say, a legal perspective, and there is a human factor there as well.
Yeah, and to take on the critical safety alerts, every university now has a texting program where they, you opt in and do texting. But as you know, in some of our older buildings and some of our older campuses, Wi-Fi and cellular service doesn't get everywhere that it needs to get. So having that extra thing there, having those extra alert spaces and stuff. But if you look at it as a whole, 21% of our undergraduate class as a whole needs some sort of accommodations, right? And that's roughly between 3.5 and 4 million students as a whole. 96% of the US based colleges failed their WCAG 2.1 accommodations. And that's accommodations for web content and digital content. That is a huge mark to miss, So we have to be doing a better job at that, right out of the gate. I think that as accommodations grow and you see that those, I don't think we're going to get less accommodations as we go forward. I think there's going to be more given. And I think just people who don't necessarily need accommodations can leverage those same products and those same services that would just enhance their time in class as well.
So I didn't know those numbers. That's really alarming. That failure rate is really alarming to me. Do you have any insight into causes of that failure? Like, what were people not doing correctly?
It was basically, things aren't closed captioned, or they're not, presented in a color scheme that could be seen by somebody who has, either issues with seeing color or issues with gradients or those kinds of things. There's a lot of those little nuances there that they miss when creating content. Sometimes when the artist or the person creating the page wants to make it pretty for them, and they're not thinking about somebody who can't see those colors or can't see that graphic, or can't hear the noises that that the web page is making, or the speaking that is going on, or the music playing. So that's most of where that's been missed.
Interesting. So you rattled off a lot of things too, which is also alarming. It was like, oh man, we're missing the boat in a lot of places. So if a college wanted to start with one simple step to start making things more accessible, what advice would you give them?
I would start with an audit, a walk audit. Remove yourself from your desk, go walk around the campus, go see for yourself, but go do it through the mindset of these students, and through the lens of a number of, can you see clearly? Can you read? Are there captions? Just kind of put yourself in their shoes, but you got to do boots on the ground. You got to go out there. And then another idea is kind of this template approach, where you create templates based on an accessible standard, so that way everything going out the door or shown on screens should, in theory, be compliant. But I think the point is, do it early, and if you're already midstream through a deployment, or years into a deployment, go see what's on the screens yourself.
Yeah, I think absolutely getting involved with the students that are in that population that it directly affects, and seeing where the pain points are and seeing where the disconnects are. Really figuring out what their needs are and what they would like to see happen.
That's awesome. And I love that it wasn't even like a technical pitch. It was that human element of go out, take notes, observe, talk to other humans. Like that's a really simple step.
The tech piece is easy. The human piece is the hard piece.
Yeah. So to that end, do you have any advice for that human element of like, this is how I connect with the stakeholders when it comes to digital signage or accessibility? Like, here's a pro tip you can take with you if you're trying to connect in that way.
Just spend the time doing it.
Yeah. It's got to be a part of the process. And I think, to Donovan's point around, the staggering number of non-compliant universities, I'm not sure that's intentional. I think in some cases an afterthought. It just needs to kind of be brought to the forefront, really from a leadership perspective to start. But someone or a group of people need to make a conscious effort to do so. Absolutely.
As we wrap this up, I think that people can be most inspired and informed by stories. So to that end, have you seen a moment where inclusive AV really made a difference to someone, whether it be a student, faculty, or staff?
Sure. Also, I know one that comes to mind from in my role, as we were thinking about urgent alert providers and systems to manage urgent alerts. I recall hearing about a situation where a multilingual student received an alert in a last minute building change sort of situation, and it was small, but I recall hearing just how meaningful that was, and kind of resonated up to the highest levels in terms of communication. So just that example. I'm sure Donovan may have better ones.
No, that's a wonderful one. My favorite one of recent times is that we have a professor that is confined to a wheelchair, and he has assistants that go with him, but he's teaching medical students and teaching, procedures and those things. So we've been able to set up and give him remote camera access and things like that to really focus in on what he's doing, so he doesn't need to be in a special place. He can be in the classroom with the kids and engaging with them and be able to do those things. So I think that's my favorite one so far.
I love that. I love those stories. Before we move on to the rapid round, I kind of want to just ask what's missing. So to give you each the floor to see, was there anything that you wanted to make sure we covered, any points you want to make sure that you get to make about accessibility and AV design?
I think we covered the majority of it. I think for me, my lasting thoughts would just be what I said previously, that it needs to be a focus. It needs to be championed. And you're going to have to go out and audit and really make sure that top to bottom, accessibility is baked in, not only to your signage experience, but your other digital experiences, as Donovan mentioned, mobile, internet sort of applications, things like that. But it has to be a focus, and it needs to be discussed on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, I think as AV and IT people, our job, if we're doing our job the best possible way, we're delivering a level playing field to everyone that's coming to class and everyone that's coming to the university. So we need to keep striving to level that playing field for them.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are very good closing thoughts that are perfect to wrap up the on-topic portion of this podcast. I'm now going to take us to the rapid round, starting with, if aliens landed on campus and asked you to show them one thing that represented college life, what would you show them?
Should it be through the lens of digital signage?
Honestly, it can be through anything. We are off topic now. Okay,
I'll give you two. For me, the non-digital signage answer would be like college football, right? College football to me embodies college. I'm a big fan myself. I think it encapsulates the spirit of college. My digital signage answer would be kind of the chaos of, say, a digital bulletin board. And you're seeing memes, rock concert events, clubs. Yeah. It's chaos, but it's community all wrapped in one. So that's my answer there.
Yeah, I totally agree with him. I was going to say football Saturday in Morgantown. You get pretty much everything you need to know about West Virginia and West Virginia University wrapped up in one event. And even from a digital signage standpoint, the giant jumbo screens at the football games, you learn a lot about the community. You learn a lot about what's going on in West Virginia, because it becomes the largest city in West Virginia on a football Saturday. So it pretty much encapsulates everything that's going on here.
All right, there you go. Both good answers. I don't know if I could come up with a better one, honestly, because like football kind of encompasses it all. So perfect. All right. If your life had a soundtrack, what song would be playing during finals week?
I thought about this question, and it's a song by Queen called "Don't Stop Me Now," and it's the reason why I picked that. I'm a Queen fan, but also because it's it's high energy, it's high stakes. We're all trying to get through. So pretty simple for me, but "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen.
Yeah, the final countdown.
There you go.
Nice, very good. Okay, for similar reasons.
Yeah.
Good. Yep. Awesome. This is a really, you can take this wherever you want. What's a hill that you're willing to die on?
Okay. All Star Wars content is good Star Wars content.
Wow. I like it.
Okay.
For me, I'm gonna come up with a non-topic answer, which is just, I think design needs to be inclusive and not exclusive. And if design is exclusive, then I think you've missed the mark. So I'll leave my comments at that.
Okay.
I'll amend mine. AV is IT.
There you go.
I don't even stick with your first one. It was good. It was controversial. Yeah. We're going to get comments. All right. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you very much, guys, for being here. This was a fun conversation and a very informative conversation. I hope it's helpful to our listeners. How can people contact you after this episode airs if they'd like to do that?
Sure. For myself, email is a great medium there. It's travis.kemp, Kemp, at corbett.com. Otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Yep. My email is dmonday@hsc.wvu.edu, where you can find me on LinkedIn under Donovan Monday.
All right, awesome. Thanks again, guys, for being here. I will make sure that your emails and LinkedIn links are in the show notes so people can easily connect with you. Donovan, they might be connecting with you to talk about Star Wars.
That's all right. Bring it on.
Thank you for listening to the High podcast. Opinions expressed were our own and not necessarily representative of institutions, sponsors, or companies. If you didn't like the opinions expressed in this podcast, there might be better ones.